That day when my son's friend visited our house turned out to be one of the strangest yet most unexpectedly memorable days of my life. It began like any other quiet Saturday afternoon. The sun was dipping low over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow through the living room windows. I stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a glass of water in hand, while the soft murmur of the evening news filled the background. Daniel, my son, was away on a camping trip with his college friends, and the house felt unusually still. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Setting my glass aside, I opened the door to find Sebastian, Daniel's best friend, standing there. His dark eyes held a flicker of hesitation, his posture almost apologetic. "Hey, Mr. Johnson," he said with a sheepish smile. "I hope I'm not bothering you. Daniel told me I could stop by if I needed to borrow something for the trip." I didn't realize he'd already left. Sebastian had been a part of Daniel's life for years. I'd watched him grow from an awkward teenager into a confident, athletic young man. He carried himself with a quiet maturity and had a warmth in his smile that put people at ease. Always polite, always thoughtful. The kind of friend any parent would hope for their child. "It's no bother," I said, stepping aside so he could come in. "What do you need?" He shifted slightly, looking a little embarrassed. "Actually, I forgot my sleeping bag at home. I thought Daniel might have a spare." I chuckled. "He probably does. Let's check the garage." As he followed me, I couldn't help but notice how much he'd changed since I last saw him. He was taller now, broader, and his shirt fit in a way that showed he'd clearly been putting in time at the gym. I pushed the thought aside quickly. In the garage, I dug through a pile of camping gear until I found the spare sleeping bag. I handed it to him, brushing off the dust. "Here you go. Daniel won't mind." "Thanks, Mr. Johnson," he said with a genuine smile. Then, after a pause, "Do you mind if I hang out for a bit? My ride's not coming for another hour, and I'd rather not just sit in the car." "Of course," I said. "Come on in." We ended up back in the kitchen, and I put on a pot of coffee. Sebastian leaned casually against the counter, arms crossed, while we talked about his classes, summer plans, and the trip. He'd always been easy to talk to, thoughtful and articulate in a way that made conversation flow naturally. But as the minutes passed, I noticed something different. The way his eyes lingered a moment too long when we met each other's gaze. The way he seemed to edge just a little closer without realizing it. I told myself I was imagining things. Then, when he reached for his mug, his fingers brushed mine. "Sorry," he said quickly, pulling back. "It's fine," I replied with a small laugh. "I'm just clumsy." But there was something in the air now. Something quiet, unspoken. I busied myself with the coffee, trying to shake the strange feeling in my chest. This was Sebastian, my son's best friend. Whatever I thought I was sensing, it wasn't real. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice softer. "Mr. Johnson, can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, turning toward him. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor before meeting mine. "Have you ever wanted something you knew you shouldn't?" The question caught me off guard. My pulse quickened. "That's a pretty heavy question," I said, keeping my tone light. He gave a small, self-conscious laugh, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, sorry. I've just been thinking about it lately." There was an honesty in his voice that made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. "Sometimes we want things that aren't good for us," I said carefully. "It's human nature, but that doesn't mean we have to act on them." He nodded slowly, his gaze distant. "Yeah, I guess you're right." But the look he gave me after that, the flicker in his eyes, the way his lips parted slightly like he might say more, unsettled me. I turned back to the coffee, pouring us both another cup just to have something to do. We sat in a quiet that wasn't uncomfortable, but wasn't normal either. It was charged, as though something unsaid hovered in the air. When Sebastian leaned back in his chair to stretch, I caught myself glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. His shirt shifted just enough to reveal a narrow strip of skin, and I quickly looked away, feeling heat rise to my face. "This is ridiculous," I thought. Get a grip. So, I said aloud, breaking the tension. Are you looking forward to the camping trip? He shrugged with a faint smile. Yeah, I guess. It's more Daniel's thing. I'm just there for the company. That sounds like you, I said, always looking out for him. You've been a great friend to Daniel over the years. Sebastian looked down, tracing the rim of his mug with his thumb. He's been a good friend to me, too. Then, after a pause, you've been good to me as well. There it was again, that softness in his tone, the unspoken weight behind his words. My chest tightened. You've always made me feel welcome, like part of the family. That's not something I take for granted. I nodded slowly. Well, you are part of the family, Sebastian. At least that's how I see it. He smiled at that, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Thanks, Mr. Johnson. He hesitated for a moment, then added almost as an afterthought. You can call me Sebastian, you know. The Mr. Johnson thing feels too formal. I chuckled. All right, Sebastian. But only if you stop calling me Mr. Johnson. Deal, he said, his grin widening just enough to ease some of the tension between us. We moved into the living room and settled onto the couch. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the soft glow from the table lamp cast warm shadows across the room. Sebastian sat at the far end, posture relaxed, though his eyes seemed unusually focused on me. Can I ask you something? He said after a stretch of silence. Of course, I replied, bracing myself for another serious question. Have you ever felt like there was something you couldn't say out loud, even though you really wanted to? I frowned slightly at the question. I think everyone feels that way at some point, I said carefully. But sometimes, saying it is the only way to move forward. Sebastian nodded, gaze still fixed on the floor. Yeah. But what if saying it changes everything? His words sent a quiet shiver through me, though I couldn't explain why. Sometimes change is good, I offered, even if it's scary at first. He looked up then, meeting my eyes. What if it's not? The weight of his gaze made me look away, unsure how to respond. I guess it depends on what you're afraid of. There was a pause before he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid of ruining this, of ruining what we have. The vulnerability in his tone caught me off guard. Sebastian, I began, but he quickly cut me off. Never mind, he said, standing abruptly and running a hand through his hair. I should go. My ride's probably close by now. I stood as well, instinctively reaching out to stop him. My hand rested lightly on his arm, and he froze. You don't have to go, I said softly. Not if you don't want to. He looked at me for a long moment before stepping a little closer. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted, his voice unsteady. I just know I'm not ready to leave. His words landed with an impact I wasn't prepared for. Emotions, confusion, curiosity, an unexpected sense of closeness swirled inside me. Sebastian, I said quietly, this is complicated. I know, he whispered, glancing toward the floor, but I can't pretend I don't feel it. The air between us grew heavier, filled with an unspoken understanding neither of us could easily name. I wanted to create space to put distance between us, be you. But instead I found myself caught in the moment, unsure of where it might lead. We both fell silent. The world outside seemed far away, leaving only the two of us in that softly lit room. Finally, he stepped back, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make things awkward. It's okay, I managed, though I wasn't sure what okay meant in that moment. He began pacing, his thoughts clearly running ahead of his words. This doesn't feel right. Daniel would be upset if he knew we were even having this kind of conversation. The mention of my son brought reality back in sharp focus. You're right, I said gently. We need to be careful. What's there to talk about? He asked, his voice tense. I crossed a line. I took a slow breath. It's not just you, I admitted. I noticed it too. His eyes widened, surprise flickering there. Then he shook his head. We can't. You're Daniel's dad. I'm his best friend. This isn't supposed to happen. I know, I said softly. But it already has, in some way. Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. Sebastian sat back down, burying his face in his hands. I don't want to lose this, he said finally. Not just the friendship, but your trust. I don't want to mess everything up. You're not going to lose me, I told him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. No matter what, we'll figure it out. You mean that?
Ido.
But we have to be careful. This isn't just about us. It's about Daniel too. He nodded slowly. You're right. He can't know. It would hurt him. The weight of that truth settled over us. Even so, I couldn't ignore the quiet connection that had taken root between us. Hours passed as we talked, circling the same thoughts, trying to understand what had happened. The tension never fully left, but neither did the ease of conversation we'd always shared. When the clock crept past midnight, Sebastian stood reluctantly. I should go. I followed him to the door. Take care of yourself. He paused, hand on the handle. You too, he said, his eyes holding mine for a moment longer than necessary. And thanks for not thinking less of me. There's nothing to think less of, Sebastian. Just be careful, okay? He nodded once, then stepped into the cool night. As the door closed, I leaned against it, my thoughts tangled. Whatever had just happened, I knew one thing. This wasn't the end of it. Something had shifted, and I couldn't quite bring myself to wish it away. I could still feel the warmth of his hand lingering against mine. The weight of it all was almost suffocating. Yet I couldn't bring myself to let go. It was late on a Thursday when the knock came at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Daniel was still out of town. My heart jumped at the sound, a mix of anxiety and hope rushing through me. When I opened the door, there he was. I shouldn't be here, Sebastian said before I could speak, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. I know I shouldn't, but I couldn't stay away. The sight of him, his expression a mix of vulnerability and determination, left me momentarily speechless. I stepped aside, wordlessly inviting him in. He hesitated for a moment, then crossed the threshold. His presence filled the space in a way that felt both familiar and foreign. I've been thinking about what happened, he said, standing in the entryway, his gaze fixed on the floor. And I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about you. His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I felt the air leave my lungs. Sebastian, we talked about this. It's complicated. I know, he said quickly, his voice trembling. I know it's complicated and I know it's risky, but that doesn't change how I feel. I don't know how to make it stop. I wanted to tell him he wasn't alone, that I'd been feeling the same, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing against his arm. He flinched at the touch but didn't pull away. Sebastian, I said softly, we can't keep doing this. I know, he repeated, finally lifting his gaze to mine. But it's not that easy, is it? If it were, I wouldn't be here. His honesty stripped me of any defenses I had left. I stepped closer, still holding his arm. What do you want me to say? I asked quietly. I don't know, he admitted, his voice breaking. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said firmly, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. But this, whatever this is, can't go too far. His shoulders slumped, the weight of my words settling on him. I don't know if I can stop feeling this way, he murmured. Neither could I, but I kept it to myself. We ended up in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. The space between us felt like a chasm, impossible to cross without risking everything. I've known you for so long, Sebastian said suddenly. You've always been this constant in my life, someone I could trust. And somewhere along the way, that turned into this. I swallowed hard. I care about you too, Sebastian, but this is dangerous. It could ruin everything. I know, he said, looking down at his hands. I don't want to ruin anything, but I also can't pretend this doesn't exist. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to find the right words to make it easier, but nothing came. I should go, he said finally, resignation heavy in his voice. Sebastian. No, he interrupted, standing abruptly. I can't stay here. Not if it means feeling like this and not being able to do anything about it. I stood too, my heart racing. Wait. He froze, hand on the doorknob. What? I don't want you to go. I blurted out before I could stop myself. I don't know what to do about this either, but I don't want you to leave. He turned slowly, eyes wide with surprise. You mean that? I nodded, my throat tight. Yeah. Ido. The air between us shifted. He took a hesitant step toward me, his eyes searching mine for reassurance. I don't want to make things harder, he said softly, but being here around you, it feels right, even when I know it shouldn't. My resolve crumbled. I closed the distance between us and took his hand, his fingers laced with mine, uncertain yet sure. We're playing with fire, I whispered. Maybe, he said with the faintest smile. But I'm not afraid of the heat. The hours that followed were a blur of whispered confessions and moments we both knew we shouldn't linger in. We didn't cross any lines, but the connection between us deepened, becoming harder and harder to ignore. As dawn broke, casting a soft light over the living room, we sat on the couch with his head resting against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt like a fragile truce. After a long pause, Sebastian said, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you. I really like you, and I don't want to hide it anymore. I'm still not sure how you feel, but I had to say it. His vulnerability sent a wave of emotion through me. I'm glad you told me, I said slowly. I've been feeling something too, something I can't quite explain. You matter to me more than you know. We held each other's gaze for a long moment, and without thinking, I closed the space between us. We embraced, firm, lingering, and full of everything we couldn't put into words. When we pulled away, he exhaled. I don't know where this goes, I admitted. You won't lose me, he said with quiet certainty. We'll figure it out together. The months that followed were a delicate balancing act, carefully keeping our connection hidden from Daniel and the rest of the world. There were moments of doubt, fear, and wondering if we were doing the right thing. But through it all, we held on to each other, finding solace in the quiet moments, the shared glances, and the unspoken understanding. We knew it couldn't last forever. The truth would come out eventually. But for now, we allowed ourselves to live in the in-between, savoring the small pieces of time we could claim as ours. And I looked at Sebastian, his smile lighting up the room. I knew one thing for certain. Some connections are too powerful to ignore, too deep to deny. And whatever this was, it was worth holding on to.